Welcome to the third video in this presentation series on the rejuvenation process of human body and mind. And in this video I'm going to be discussing the various biochemical influences or the biochemistry that you require to manage effectively within your system if you want to overcome any illness, disease or dysfunction. If you want to attain a high level of health and well-being, this is critical knowledge. So if you currently have an ailment or a long-term condition, or simply have mood fluctuations, highs and lows with your energy, and so forth, even if you're carrying additional weight, then this is all going to be critical knowledge. I really encourage you to pay attention well, take note, and then apply this knowledge afterwards. You'll be very thankful that you did. It'll have a profound impact on how you feel from day to day. And long term, of course, you really can overcome health conditions by getting this right. So before we move into this knowledge, let's do a little recap. If you'll recall from the first presentations, we have broken up the system into four different areas. The first of which is physical. We addressed that in the last video. The second is biochemical. We're going to be dealing with that in this video. And then we'll move on to the electrical level and electromagnetic or subtle energies that we also have to manage to holistically raise the function of our system. So you'll notice here that I've utilized a picture of the cardiovascular system to symbolize the biochemical level. And that is because the cardiovascular system is predominantly responsible for delivering the various biochemistries around our system. It is sometimes referred to as the circulatory system, and that is because it circulates the biochemistry around our body. Now, there are other systems such as the lymphatic system and the cerebrospinal system that also pump fluid through the body, but consistent with the general or overall theme of this presentation series, we want to keep this as simple as we can. If we make it overly complex, it's difficult to apply. And so what we're going to do is break this up into just three different components that we have to manage effectively. Now, the first component, of course, is the cardiovascular system itself, the transport system that delivers the biochemistry through the system. And the second component is the digestive system. So when you go to place energy in the form of food or drink into your system, it's going to move straight down your throat, isn't it? Right? It's going to move down this tube here and into your stomach, where it then moves into your small intestine and large intestine, and that's essentially how the food becomes digested, moves across to the blood system and gets to the rest of the body. So it's needless to say that if you know how to keep this system functioning really well, it's going to be a positive or beneficial impact on your overall biochemistry, isn't it? The other major component is once you have energy within your system from the nutrients of the food that you're eating and drink, then your body's going to take those nutrients and model it into various glandular secretions such as hormones and by your glands and organs, right? And tangibly, you will notice that your mood can move up and down. That is as a result of your internal biochemistry changing via what is happening within your glandular system. So to effectively manage your biochemistry, you need to make sure that you have these systems under your control. You need to be educated about it, and you need to handle them very effectively. Now, because of these three different topics here, I'm actually going to break this video up into three separate videos so we don't become overwhelmed with information. But each video will move on in the knowledge and supply to the next or forthcoming videos, and you'll be able to integrate this more holistically. So first up, let's take a look here at the cardiovascular system. So when I refer to cardiovascular system, what I'm referring to here is the heart and the vessels that come out of the heart. Illustrated here as the blue vessels called veins and the red vessels called arteries. So also of note is here are your lungs when you're breathing from moment to moment. Take a big breath in so you can relate. as you breathe in, oxygen from the air is moved from the lungs into the bloodstream and pumped from the heart through this major vessel, the aorta. We'll come back to refer to that at a later point, where it there branches out into these other lesser or slightly smaller blood vessels that then become smaller and smaller as it comes through the rest of the body. Now, the blood vessels also permeate the digestive system, and that's how the nutrients get into the bloodstream, pumped by the heart, and that's how biochemistry circulates your system. All right. So the cardiovascular system forms the inner highways, and this is an analogy that we'll use moving forward, or rivers through which the nutrients and hormones reach our cells. Cellular waste is also removed from the cells via the bloodstream or the cardiovascular system. Now, to make this a little more relatable and let the knowledge sink in as to the importance of this, we're going to make an analogy, metaphorically, with the city of Venice. So, hands up who's been to visit Venice before? That's not me. If you've been to Italy and been to Venice specifically, you'll be aware of this extraordinary city. If you haven't been there before, then you probably will have heard of it or seen pictures of it. And it's extraordinary, of course, because everything is delivered around the city by boats. It's like having, a bunch of houses out in the middle of the harbour. You're very about to relate to that. Of course, it's going to have to be delivered by boats, isn't it? And so in Venice, you have not roadways, but little rivers that go beside each of the housing blocks and buildings and so forth, and everything is delivered by boats. So these waterways permeate the city and transport not only people, but the things around the city. And if we have a look at this overall aerial view, you'll see the Grand Central Canal here. That's like the aorta coming out of the heart in the human system, isn't it? It moves right through the center of the city, and what you see here is subsidiary rivers coming off the Grand Central Canal, or aorta of Venice, where it breaks up into other little rivulets that can then get into the various city blocks, houses, and so forth. So if we zoom in here, we see here's the Grand Central Canal. Here's the little rivulet coming off, going all the way down. Here's another one moving alongside. And you can see if we zoom in a little further here, there's little boats here. This is literally the way that things are delivered to the various areas of the city. Now, as you can imagine, what is going to be delivered? The things that we need to transport are items that we want and need. We want to get things into the house, don't we? And we also need to get things out of the house. Generally, that's things that we don't want. We refer to that as rubbish, don't we? So people are going to have to jump on the boats. The boats are going to have to come right outside the housing blocks. You're going to have to get off and walk inside the house with food or shopping that you've been. You might need an iron or clothes hanger. These are some things that you'll need to bring into the house. After you've finished your meals, you have scraps, you have rubbish. You throw that in the rubbish. It needs to be taken outside the houses. I'll try to get my little mouse cursor working here. Back onto the boats, and that gets taken away back through the stream or river that goes beside the housing blocks, doesn't it? And I'm assuming there's not a complimentary rubbish helicopter in Venice. I'm making an assumption there. I think it's a reasonably safe one. So that's been an important analogy to consider, because soon enough we're going to look at how this actually applies directly to the human system as well. So we come back to this initial statement. The cardiovascular system forms the rivers or inner highways through which the nutrients and hormones reach our cells. Cellular waste, i.e. rubbish, is also removed from the cells via the bloodstream, i.e. the cardiovascular system. So let's make this a little more tangible here. If you need to pick something up, now do this with me. Bring your hand up in front of you, squeeze into a fist, open your hand. Interestingly enough, your hand is responding to your intention. You're not consciously saying, all right, brain, direct an electrical impulse down to my hand so that the muscles can contract, resulting in my fingers moving. That's not happening, is it? very fortunate the system is simple as we're wanting to make it here, but that's just what's really happening, is that when you have an intention, your brain is sending a signal down these, what are painted as yellow in this picture here, and generally scientifically are nerves. All right, so your muscles need both the instructions and energy to function. And your nerves carry the instructions from the brain, and your blood vessels carry the energy in the form of the food, right? So for your arm to work here, you need to get energy moving from your digestive system and electrical energy moving from your brain and central nervous system to carry both electrical and biochemical energy in the form of nutrients to your forearm, where your muscles can receive that. So tangibly, let's give this little man his muscles and skin back. Well, we won't give him his skin back, assuming he's not just a super ripped athlete there. And let's zoom in here and take a little look at it. So just as your houses in Venice need food to be delivered to them and rubbish to be taken away, you also need the cells within the body, the muscle cells specifically, and of course the organs, to have food delivered to them and rubbish removed from them as well. Let's look under the cover here and see what this looks like. So we're going to take our forearm here as an example, and we're going to zoom in. We're taking this section of the body, once again, hand up, contract, extend. If you want to pick something up, this has to happen. Let's take a little section of the muscles here and look underneath the bonnet. Say we're going to penetrate into the very muscle fibers here. And what do we find? Well, what we have is arterioles. That's a smaller version of the arteries. And venules, that's a smaller version of the veins. So if we compare that to our little venous thoroughfare, the rivulets, it's similar to that, isn't it? That's going alongside what you can see here are housing blocks, can't you? These are the cells within the muscles. You can see that these major water thoroughfare meet up with smaller ones that go down the side of the housing blocks, as it were, and then they branch off into little mini pathways where you can then carry the various nutrients that are needed, bring them inside the cellular houses where all of the metabolic processes can take place that are essential to you not only moving, but all of your organs operating effectively so that you can go about your life as you wish. It's all taking place for you. Least we can do is really help it out a bit, isn't it? So let's move on and consider something really important in relation to this function. The cardiovascular system can become blocked up by poor dietary choices and also lack of stimulation. So I'm sure you've heard of the health issue referred to as heart attack before. It's a major health issue. It's one of the highest mortalities, if not the highest, probably only coming second to cancer. But it refers to, for example, here's our blood vessels. We just saw, didn't we, in our previous analogies, how important it was to have those riverways open and flowing so that the boats can move through and deliver things. So here are blood vessels moving through the river of the bloodstream. And you can see here, if you have a poor diet, particularly you're taking in bad fats is associated with particular LDLs, these will cling to the side of your blood vessels and form up these plaques, right? And you can see as it sticks to the side of the blood vessels, it's actually narrowing the passage there. Now, if we go to back to a roadway example, I'm sure you will have been in a traffic jam before. Well, think about why a traffic jam occurs. It occurs because there is a limited space through which the traffic, in this image referring to the blood vessels, but also the proteins that are carrying the various nutrients from the food that you've eaten. The blood vessels, by the way, carry the oxygen. But if the roadway is not open enough, you can see how that would create a road block. So when a road block occurs within the bloodstream, if that's in the heart, well, that's what can cause a heart attack. If the roadblock within the bloodstream occurs within the brain, well, that can cause a stroke. So we're talking about something of very high significance, aren't we? Because these are very high mortalities, meaning that is primary ways through which people die. And so, needless to say, it's very important that you keep your cardiovascular system functioning effectively. So if there is a blockage, demonstrated here by this plant, this impairs the nutrient delivery and the metabolic waste removal. Your system becomes sluggish and dysfunctional, and this increases your chances of illness and disease, which I've just really vividly described, haven't I? Now, long term, of course, this accelerates the aging process, and this is how it directly relates to our ambition here of wanting to rejuvenate the body systems, because if we have a blocked up roadway, if we have an inefficient ways of delivering the things that are needed to our cellular structures, in other words, the roadways that allow the trucks to deliver the various things that are needed in the city, if they're blocked up, then things are going to go into dysfunction within the city, aren't they? Likewise, if the rubbish trucks aren't coming into the city and removing the waste and rubbish that we're creating, that's going to create a problem. If you're in your house and you don't clean up the house, if you don't take out the rubbish and rubbish accumulates within your house, what happens? It becomes stressful, it becomes an ordeal. And so that experience that we have as a human being is really a macroscopic result of what's happening on this microscopic level. Our body system is comprised of all of these trillions of cells. The collective result of what's happening on that microscopic cellular level is really how we feel. So it's very important, isn't it? So here's what you can do to increase the function of your cardiovascular system. When you get out there and have a walk, that's all you really need to do is get out there and have a firm walk, include a few hills and stairs, for example. You'll notice that your breathing rate comes up. You'll notice that your heart starts to beat a lot faster. So that is what is required to increase the health of the cardiovascular system. You increase the literal muscle. The heart is the muscle that pumps blood around your system. It increases the width of your blood vessels. In other words, if you've got a major roadway heading into the city, it would be more effective, wouldn't it, if it's wider. It can carry more trucks, it can carry more cars. Of course, the boat example in relation to Venice is more specifically similar to the human system. But can you see how if you have wider blood vessels and a stronger heart, then this will result in pumping blood more effectively through your system. It's less likely to block up. And of course, this is going to give you a lot more energy and make your system more efficient at removing the rubbish, getting rid of it, which is going to result in you having a more healthy and functional system, right? So this is actually something that we specifically address in our specialized cardio class, wellness cardio that we do at Wellness in Motion in Linfield. So if you're in range, you're welcome to come and check out that. Otherwise, there's many other forms of cardiovascular exercise such as cycling, boxing, rowing, even skiing. Anything where you're out there and your heart rate is up, you'll find will get the system working more effectively. Now, of course, the other component is to eat with a greater degree of healthy choices. This will result in less unhealthy fats, such as those LDLs that block up the vascular system. We're going to be talking about that next in the digestive system talk.